I never imagined that a routine flight could turn into something so bizarre, so theatrical. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It wasn't bad weather. It was a woman who boarded the plane with the unshakable belief that the world owed her something special. I've seen people get frustrated over flight delays, lost luggage, even seat mix-ups. But I'd never witnessed anyone walk onto a plane and declare, "This is always my seat, whether my ticket says so or not." She didn't look out of place. She wore designer clothes, expensive sunglasses, and walked like she was on a red carpet. But her behavior sent chills down the entire cabin. With a sharp, piercing voice full of entitlement, she shouted at me, who was already seated with a confirmed ticket in hand, claiming I was in her seat. That's when I realized I wasn't just sitting in first class. I was sitting on a stage, and the self-appointed lead actress had just launched into the greatest performance of her life. I'm the victim. No one could have predicted what would unfold when someone uses the title influencer to demand something they were never entitled to. No one expected she'd go live on social media, right there in the cabin, threaten the airline, blame fellow passengers, fake tears, then scream and flail. Until finally, she was handcuffed and escorted off the plane, while the rest of us watched in stunned silence. But you know what the strangest part was? An hour later, mid-air and far from the chaos, my phone buzzed. A message from her. She wanted me to write a post for her, to help clear things up, to explain that it wasn't as bad as people were saying. She called it a small misunderstanding. Now, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a lesson, and I want to tell the whole story, from the moment she strutted into first class with that air of entitlement, to the only way she left it, restrained in zip ties, with the collective sigh of an entire plane echoing behind her. This is a story about digital power, about the illusion of privilege that some people believe they own, and how, when misused, it doesn't elevate you, it strips you down. It's the fall of a modern-day Karen, and I saw it happen with my own eyes. I boarded that plane feeling light. After 3 exhausting weeks of business travel, meetings, deadlines, reports, layovers, I finally had a few hours just for myself. Not in a noisy cafe, not in a sterile hotel room at midnight, but here, in first class, where my seat reclined all the way, a glass of sparkling wine was waiting, and for once, no one could reach me. I found my seat, 3A by the window, placed my carry-on in the overhead bin, sat down, buckled in, exhaled. This was the moment I'd looked forward to from the start of the trip. No schedules, no deliverables, just me, the open sky, and the steady hum of jet engines. Everything was in place for a peaceful flight, until she showed up. Until she appeared. I heard the sharp, deliberate clatter of suitcase wheels dragging up the aisle from the back of the cabin, but it wasn't your typical rolling sound. It was decisive, purposeful, like someone was warning the entire plane, "Make way. I'm coming." I looked up instinctively and saw her. She stormed in like a thunderstorm wrapped in designer fabric, oversized sunglasses despite still being inside the terminal, a glittery, high-end tracksuit that screamed, "Look at me." Blonde curls perfectly styled, her face etched with irritation and unmistakable arrogance. She looked at no one but me. For a split second, I felt like I had unknowingly stepped on something sacred to her. She stopped right beside me, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, as if I had violated some unspoken social code. "You're in my seat." Her voice rang out, sharp, high-pitched, and cold like steel. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a polite, "Excuse me, maybe there's been a mistake." It was a command, and everyone in first class heard it. I looked at her, then down at the boarding pass in my hand. "Sorry," I said calmly. "I believe this seat is mine. See? 3A. I held the ticket up, clear as day, no room for confusion. She didn't bother to look. She folded her arms, tilted her chin upward, and let out a dismissive laugh, like I'd just told her the moon was made of cheese. "I always sit here. I fly this route every month, and I always pick 3A. They clearly messed something up. The way she said it, the tone, the deliberate enunciation, it was like the airline owed her this seat forever, like she was the unofficial owner of 3A. I didn't respond, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I was working hard to stay composed. I'm a calm person, rarely confrontational, but that level of baseless entitlement, it tested every ounce of restraint I had. Thankfully, a flight attendant approached, She looked to be in her 30s, professional, poised, clearly someone who had handled all kinds of passengers before. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" she asked, polite but watchful. The woman quickly switched to her fake polite mode. "Yes, there is," she said with a forced smile. "This man is sitting in my seat. I always sit here. It must be a system error." The flight attendant nodded, remaining composed. "All right, let me take a look at your boarding pass, ma'am." I looked at her and saw for the first time a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. It was clear she wasn't entirely sure anymore. After a few seconds of rummaging through her oversized designer handbag, she pulled out a crumpled boarding pass and handed it over with a smug toss of her head. The flight attendant glanced at it, just for a second. "Ma'am," she said calmly, "your ticket is for seat 17C, in economy. This is seat 3A in first class, assigned to this gentleman." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Because instead of acknowledging the mistake or offering an apology, she exploded. "This is impossible. I booked first class. I have a medical condition. I can't sit cramped in the back with everyone else." Her voice rose with each word. Her eyes reddened. Her hands trembled. Not with sadness, but with the fury of being called out. She was trying to spin a sob story, but to everyone watching, it was obvious. This was someone used to bending rules to get what she wanted. A passenger behind me murmured, "Oh no, what now?" I heard a few sighs. Another person quietly pulled out their phone and placed it on the armrest, ready, it seemed, to record. The flight attendant remained professional. "Ma'am, I'm afraid we can't allow passengers to sit in a class they didn't book. If you'd like to request an upgrade, I'd be happy to check availability." "I'm not paying another dime," she snapped. "I'm a regular. I've recommended this airline to so many people. I have serious online influence. If you treat me badly, I'll post about this on Facebook. I have thousands of followers." The air inside the cabin shifted, from tension to secondhand embarrassment. A man in seat 2B muttered, "Facebook? Do people still think that's a real platform of influence?" A few quiet chuckles rippled from behind. I still said nothing. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I doubted anything I could say would make a difference. With people like her, logic was a lost language, and every no became a personal attack. She stood firmly in the aisle, looking at me, looking at the flight attendant, then turning to scan the rest of first class. "What about you?" she suddenly barked, pointing straight at me. "You're a young, healthy man. Why can't you give up your seat for me? I need it. I deserve that seat more than you do." "Hi everyone," she began, her eyes gleaming with a carefully crafted sparkle. "I'm being discriminated against on this flight with, well, you know which airline. I have a ticket, I'm a loyal customer, I have a medical condition, and yet they're refusing to let me sit in first class, even though I asked politely. All I wanted was to be treated with basic dignity, but instead of helping, they humiliated me. They even let someone else steal my seat." She turned her phone camera toward me. "And here, this man refused to give up the seat, even though I clearly need it more. He knows that, but he's keeping it out of pure selfishness. This is how women like me are treated." I didn't look away. I didn't get angry. I simply stared back at her, calm and silent. Because at this point, there was nothing more to say. She was unraveling herself, one exaggerated word at a time. Another passenger, an older woman in seat 1D, leaned forward and whispered, "Isn't this the same woman who got banned from that hotel last year for flipping out over breakfast?" I turned toward her, surprised. "There was a video," she continued, voice low but clear. "She screamed in the lobby because they ran out of whole grain toast. Got escorted out. Threatened to sue the hotel for false advertising." The mood inside the cabin turned into something strange, a blend of awkward humor, disbelief, and a touch of confusion. The woman live streaming her meltdown didn't seem to realize that most of her viewers weren't fans. They were witnesses, quietly watching her spiral. A young man seated behind me stifled a laugh and tilted his phone so I could see his screen. "She's got exactly 10 viewers," he whispered. I held in a sigh. The self-proclaimed influencer with over 100,000 followers was live streaming a fabricated drama. And barely a dozen people were watching her lie in real time. The flight attendant returned, this time more serious. "Ma'am," she said, "you're disrupting the boarding process. If you don't return to your assigned seat, we will have to ask you to disembark the flight." The woman snapped her phone shut, but didn't end the live stream. Clearly, she planned to keep recording secretly, maybe to edit the truth later for her version of the story. "Are you threatening me now?" she yelled. "I'm just standing up for my rights." "No," the flight attendant replied evenly. "We are standing up for the safety and timely departure of over 200 other passengers." Her tone was calm, but carried the weight of finality. For a brief moment, the woman was stunned into silence, but only for a moment. "I have rights," she repeated. "I have influence. You people have no idea what you've just done." "Oh, we know exactly what we're doing," the flight attendant replied calmly, then turned her gaze toward the front of the aircraft. "And I'm afraid the captain knows as well." At that moment, a man in a crisp pilot uniform stepped into the cabin. Gold trim on his hat, steady eyes that carried authority without a single word. He didn't have to say much. His very presence was enough to make it clear. The curtain was about to fall on her performance. The flight attendant leaned in and whispered a few words to him. The captain nodded. "Ma'am," he addressed her with professional restraint, "we've been informed that you refused to comply with your assigned seating and have disrupted the boarding process. If you do not follow instructions, we'll be forced to escort you off the aircraft under FAA regulations." "FAA?" she blurted, startled. "The Federal Aviation Administration," he clarified. "They handle violations on commercial flights, including disobeying crew instructions, causing disturbances, or impersonating other passengers." She opened her mouth to object, but no words came. Perhaps for the first time in her whole charade, she realized the situation was no longer in her control. No audience to cheer her on, no fans defending her, and the camera that once served her narrative was now quietly recording evidence against her. Moments later, 2 uniformed airport security officers boarded the plane. Calm, badge visible, silent. Their presence alone brought a heavy full stop to the chaos. "Ma'am," one officer said, hand resting lightly near his utility belt, "we're asking you to cooperate and disembark the aircraft. If you refuse, we will proceed with mandatory removal." I will never forget that image. She turned slowly, scanning the cabin with frantic eyes, as if hoping someone, anyone, would rise to her defense. But no one did. No one spoke. No one believed. She began to cry. Not tears, just a choked, rasping sound caught between rage and fear. She screamed, "I'll sue every one of you. I'll bring this airline down. I don't deserve to be treated this way." Silence. The officers moved forward, calm but firm. They extended their hands, asking her one last time. When she refused to budge, one of them gently reached into his pouch and pulled out a zip tie. Minutes later, she was gone, escorted off the plane in absolute silence, under the burning stares of hundreds of fed-up passengers. And when the cabin door finally closed behind her, the entire cabin broke into applause. Just minutes after being warned she would be removed from the flight, the woman, who had claimed to be an influencer and had threatened to ruin the airline with a Facebook post, began to shift tactics. Her smug confidence didn't vanish entirely. It simply changed form. Instead of playing the role of a person with influence, she slipped into another character. One that people like her often default to when everything else fails. The misunderstood victim, bullied, rejected, and denied compassion. "I don't understand," she choked, placing a trembling hand on her chest like she'd been struck by something invisible. "I was just trying to explain. I just needed help. Why is everyone acting like I'm the villain here?" Her voice quivered, hoarse, echoing through a cabin that had fallen completely silent. But I recognized that tremble instantly. It wasn't genuine emotion. It was a performance, a skill. She knew how to turn a confrontation into a stage for the wounded soul act. She understood which emotions would sway some into sympathy and silence others into discomfort. And perhaps she believed it would work again. "I'm not asking for much," she said, eyes gleaming with practiced tears as she looked toward the captain still standing calmly near the cabin door. "I just need a seat that accommodates my condition. I have a history of back problems. I can't sit for long in cramped spaces. I was in a car accident. I have medical documents at home. Just because I didn't bring them today, does that mean I'm lying?" No one responded. "I didn't think a professional airline could be so heartless," she continued. "I don't know why, but I feel attacked. By the passengers, by the crew, even by the captain. Everyone is turning their backs on me, as if I'm not even human. She slowly turned her head, looking at each person around her, searching, almost desperately, for a sympathetic gaze. I don't feel safe here, she whispered. I'm afraid. That was the moment things truly became uncomfortable. Not because of what she said, but how skillfully she reframed everything. As if she were the one being pushed into a corner, rather than the person who had blocked the aisle, shouted at the crew, and live-streamed threats to the airline. The captain, still calm and composed, asked, "What is it exactly that makes you feel unsafe?" She turned her head slowly and pointed at me. I was still seated in 3A, still silent, still composed. "Him," she said, her voice trembling. "He refused me. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, like I was beneath him. You don't have to speak to feel insulted." I almost stood up, but then I stopped myself, because in that moment I realized my silence was the best way to let her bury herself in her own words. "What did he do to you?" the captain asked again. "Nothing," she replied, her voice still trembling. But everyone knows, sometimes just the way someone looks at you is enough to feel threatened. A clear sigh was heard from row 2. A man spoke up, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. And sometimes stealing someone else's seat is what actually feels threatening. The air in the cabin turned cold. The woman realized she had lost the crowd. Her expression changed, no longer confused or hurt, but pierced with a flash of anger she could no longer hide. "I'll talk to my lawyer," she snapped. "This entire flight will be held accountable for not supporting a passenger with special needs." "We always provide support," the flight attendant responded calmly, "but it must be based on valid documentation. You haven't provided any medical records, and your assigned seat is 17C, in economy." "I've sat in this seat before," she insisted. "I've been upgraded. They've done it for me before." "You don't have an upgrade confirmation for this flight," the attendant replied, "and you're not listed as a priority customer." "I don't believe this," she screamed. "I don't believe a major airline like this would treat a woman like garbage." Then she turned to her phone, the live stream still rolling. Her face hardened, and in that single moment, every trace of wounded dignity vanished, as if that role had served its purpose. Now it was time for retaliation. She opened Facebook. Her hands shook, not from nerves but from how fast she was typing. Even from my seat, I could see the headline appear on her screen. "Humiliated and abused on a flight. A story of a woman who dared to speak up." Almost instantly, other passengers began to check their phones. The young man sitting near me leaned in and whispered, "She's totally twisting the story. Says she was mentally assaulted. Tagged the airline. Calling for a boycott." "She's trying to stir up a media storm," said an older woman in the row ahead of me. "But will anyone believe her?" "Some will," the young man replied flatly, "especially if they haven't seen the full video." And then, something happened that I hadn't expected. She began replying to comments in real time, and among them, one question stood out. "Who was the man that refused to give up his seat?" She replied, "I don't know his name, but I took a photo of his face. If anyone has information, please help me contact him." A chill shot down my spine, not because I was afraid, but because I realized something. She was attempting to dox me. She was trying to expose my identity online, in hopes of triggering a digital mob against an innocent passenger. I never imagined someone could go this far. From stealing a seat, lying, and fake crying, to now weaponizing social media against a stranger. This was no longer a performance fueled by emotion. This was manipulation. The captain exchanged a look with the lead flight attendant. Then he spoke, firmly. "We're done debating. Ma'am, we have full surveillance footage from passenger cameras and internal security. If you continue to live stream, fabricate events, or threaten any other passenger, we will file an incident report and refer this matter to federal authorities. You are in violation of aviation safety regulations." She stepped back, her face pale. "Violation?" she whispered. "Sitting in a seat not assigned to you, refusing crew instructions, disrupting the flight, broadcasting misleading content, threatening another passenger. All of these fall under violations as defined by the FAA." No one in the cabin laughed. No one applauded. Only a heavy silence, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see, would she keep performing? Nobody wanted this to escalate further, Nobody paid for first class just to be dragged into a second-rate drama, where the lead actress wrote her own script, crowned herself the hero, and turned every scene into a self-made tragedy. But that's exactly what had happened. After 3 formal warnings, one from the head attendant, one from the captain, and one from airport security, the woman still refused to back down. She stood planted in the aisle, clutching her phone, mumbling lines like a bad rehearsal. "This is suppression. This violates civil rights. I will sue. I will win." And then finally, the captain said the 4 words that made the entire cabin exhale. Even as my heart skipped a beat, "Call airport security." Minutes later, 2 officers in black uniforms entered the cabin. Their eyes were sharp, cold as steel. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't make a scene, but their presence alone shifted the entire mood into complete, breathless silence. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, his hand resting lightly on his duty belt, "you are in violation of aviation security regulations. We are asking you to leave the aircraft immediately. If you refuse, we will be forced to proceed with lawful removal." The woman, the same woman who had boldly claimed she could ruin the airline with a single social media post, now stood frozen. "You can't do this to me," she shouted, voice rising in pitch. "I'm a paying customer. I bought this ticket. I have rights. You have rights according to the ticket you purchased." The officer replied calmly, "A ticket for economy class, not first class. And those rights do not include disrupting the flight, taking a seat that isn't yours, or threatening fellow passengers." "He made me feel unsafe," she screamed, pointing at me, her voice now trembling, not with anger, but with real fear. "He didn't do anything," a female passenger across the aisle spoke up. "We all saw it. From the beginning, the only person raising their voice and causing trouble was you." "You don't know what's going on inside me," Karen practically howled. "I have mental health issues. I'm easily triggered. I need space. I need understanding. "You need to leave the plane," the officer cut in, this time with authority. "Final warning, voluntarily or by force." The air in the cabin was thick, like it was being stretched by an invisible string, ready to snap. Someone behind me exhaled loudly. A man murmured, "Please, don't drag this out any longer." And then Karen stepped back, but not to leave. She grabbed the nearest seat armrest and shouted, "You want to drag me off? Then do it. Let the whole world see how this airline treats its customers." I never thought I'd witness something like this in real life, but it was happening. One officer gently reached for her arm. The other slowly pulled out a zip tie, holding it in clear view, giving her one last chance to walk off on her own. She didn't take it. The zip tie locked shut with a harsh click, a sound that made everyone in the cabin flinch, a symbol of transition. From someone demanding power to someone placed under the rule of law. Karen thrashed in protest. "No, I'm sick. I have documentation. I'll sue all of you." "We've recorded everything since you stepped aboard," a voice said from behind her. "You won't win this." She turned to look at him, her face flushed red. "And who are you to say that?" she snapped. "An attorney," he replied calmly, then leaned back to put on his headphones. Karen's entire body trembled. She screamed, thrashed, and finally, as she was escorted down the aisle, past the very seat she had once claimed as her own, her eyes met mine. It was a strange moment. No more rage, no more crocodile tears, no more threats, just a hollow stare. As if she had just awoken from a long delusional dream, a dream in which the world owed her everything, where "I need" automatically meant "I deserve." And as she stepped out through the aircraft door, disappearing into the jet bridge, Karen was no longer the woman in the glittering designer tracksuit. She had become a reminder that no one is above the rules. A few minutes later, as the cabin door sealed shut, the plane erupted in applause. No one was cheering for humiliation. No one enjoyed watching someone dragged away in zip ties. But everyone understood, without boundaries, behavior like that would never stop. And when those boundaries are crossed, law becomes the only anchor strong enough to restore fairness. The lead flight attendant walked down the aisle, exhaling as if she'd just weathered a storm. She stopped beside me and smiled. "Thank you," she said softly, "for staying calm through all of that. It's not easy." I nodded, returning her look with quiet gratitude. "The captain said," she added in a whisper, "next time you fly with us, an upgrade will be automatic." For the first time since boarding, I smiled. A quiet elderly man in the row ahead who had said nothing the entire flight turned around. "You know," he said, "this is going to make the news." "No doubt," I replied. "And if it doesn't, I'll tell the story myself. From the beginning, just as it happened." The plane finally lifted off, nearly 40 minutes behind schedule, not because of weather, not because of maintenance, but because of one person. Karen was gone, but her presence lingered in the cabin like a single off-key note in an otherwise peaceful symphony. Everyone in first class seemed to share the same feeling. We had all just witnessed something utterly real and utterly surreal. I leaned back in my seat, book still unopened, when I heard hushed murmurs behind me. A young passenger in a navy hoodie, phone still in hand, whispered just loud enough for the row to hear, "Holy crap, the first video of her is already on Reddit. sub r/freakout. Almost 10K upvotes in under an hour." I turned my head slightly, my eyes instinctively drifting toward him. "Which video?" someone asked. "The one where she gets zip-tied," he replied, scrolling on his screen. One guy behind me filmed it, another one live-streamed the whole thing, multiple angles, even subtitles. An older woman by the window leaned toward him. "Really? But if she was taken off the plane before takeoff, how is she showing up at the destination airport? Can someone explain that to me?" The young man shrugged, offering a wry smile. "She probably didn't get there. But social media, it always gets there first." The Wi-Fi chime pinged overhead. The plane had reached cruising altitude and the internet had just been enabled. The first thing I did? Open Facebook. And sure enough, there she was, Karen. Her latest post, uploaded less than an hour ago, was titled, "I was publicly humiliated for asking for a reasonable accommodation." In under 300 words, she cast herself as the victim. She claimed the flight attendant shamed her, that the passengers ganged up on her, that the captain threatened her. And most astonishingly, I was zip-tied simply for asking for a seat that fit my medical condition. Hundreds of comments flooded in beneath the post, clearly divided into two camps. The first camp, made up of those who had already seen the raw footage on Reddit or Twitter, responded sharply. "You yelled, lied on livestream, and doxed another passenger, and you still think you're the victim? Watched the full clip? You didn't have a medical note. You took someone else's seat and threatened a lawsuit. This is the consequence. I'm an aviation attorney. What you did could get you fined up to $35,000. Proceed with caution." The second camp, those who hadn't seen the video or were longtime followers, defended her. "I don't care what the video shows. I believe you. No one should be humiliated for having a health condition. Social media always blows things out of proportion. Stay strong, Karen. Don't give up." I let out a long sigh, not out of anger, but because I knew this was inevitable. There are always people who only need one side of the story to pass judgment. And Karen knew that too. That's why she rushed to take over the narrative before the full truth came out. About an hour later, just after our in-flight meal had wrapped up, I got a push notification from a major news outlet. "Breaking. Passenger removed from plane for disruption and spreading false information." I opened the article. There were videos, screenshots, even a quote from the airline confirming. The passenger failed to comply with crew instructions, occupied a seat not assigned to her, and disrupted the boarding process. The comment section exploded. At first, I thought she was being mistreated. But after seeing the clips from 3 different angles, I take it all back. She called out another passenger and tried to crowdsource his personal info to deal with him. That's doxing, completely illegal. This is exactly why some people get permanently banned from flying. It's not the airline overreacting, it's their behavior catching up. A man seated near me was also reading the article. He turned and asked, "You think she'll ever be able to go back to normal after this?" I paused, then replied, "Maybe, if she learns to apologize, but based on how she's handled everything, I don't think she believes she's in the wrong." A few minutes later, I received a personal message from Karen. "Hi. I know we had a bit of a misunderstanding earlier. Things are getting out of hand now. People are attacking me. Could you help? Maybe just say it wasn't that serious. Just one sentence." I stared at the screen, not because I was torn, but because I was stunned. After everything she had done, demanding my seat, doxing me, distorting the facts, she was now asking me to put out the fire, with a single word. She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge any wrongdoing. She just wanted to regain control of the narrative. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled down to the latest trending tweet. Karen gets zip-tied off a flight and still logs onto Facebook to hunt down a random passenger. Internet's not having it. One standout comment beneath the article stayed with me. True power doesn't come from controlling the story. It comes from knowing when to be silent and take responsibility. That night, back at my hotel, the news about airline Karen had spread across every platform. Entertainment blogs, aviation law forums, even social commentators on YouTube had picked up the story. But what struck me most wasn't the headlines. It was the comment sections. People weren't just reacting emotionally. They were thinking critically. If she was escorted off the plane before takeoff, how is there footage of her at the arrival airport at the end of the video? That timeline doesn't add up. Either the video was edited out of order, or someone's covering their tracks. I used to work at an airport. If you're removed from a flight for security reasons, you're not allowed to board any other flight for at least 24 hours. Whether they defended her or condemned her, one thing was clear. The audience was no longer easily swayed by one-sided emotional appeals. They wanted facts, logic, authenticity. And that gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, we still live in a world where justice matters, whether on solid ground or 30,000 feet in the air. But what about you? Do you think Karen deserved everything that happened? If you agree with how the airline and the passengers handled the situation, drop a 0 in the comments. If you believe Karen deserved more compassion or that it went too far, leave a 2. We'd love to hear your take. Because this story didn't just end on a plane. It spilled into a deeper conversation about ethics, law, and human decency. Karen disappeared from the cabin like a passing storm, loud, chaotic, and then a sudden, uneasy calm. But if she thought the turbulence would end at the cabin door, she was wrong, because getting removed from that flight was only the beginning of her real consequences. By the time our flight landed, urgent alerts had already been sent through national aviation systems. Within 2 hours of the incident, Karen's name was flagged on the TSA's passenger watch list. And at the same time, something she probably didn't expect, social media became her public courtroom. The next morning, the airline released an official statement. We confirm that the passenger involved in a disruptive incident on Flight 1765 has been added to our internal no-fly list. We are cooperating with the TSA to determine further actions in accordance with federal regulations. I read the news while sitting in the hotel lounge. And strangely enough, I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt that it was right. The situation had gone far enough. It was time for boundaries to be restored. One Reddit user left a comment beneath the post. Passengers getting zip-tied for seat violations isn't new, but live streaming lies, doxing another passenger, and spinning it into a victim narrative to rally outrage, that's manipulation. And the law cannot stay silent about that. Another viewer, this time on YouTube, left a comment that made me pause. I don't support public shaming. But if Karen isn't held accountable, we're telling people it's okay to board a plane, steal someone's seat, and weaponize a phone to play the victim. Within 12 hours of the story going viral, Karen's entire online presence vanished. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all gone, as if she never existed in the digital world. But the internet never forgets. What's been streamed, recorded, and screenshot still spreads like wildfire. She used to be a micro-influencer. Now she was more influential than ever, just not in the way anyone would want. TikTok accounts began reenacting the story. One creator even dubbed the entire airplane conversation with dramatic music, calling it Karen and the First Class Meltdown, the musical. It hit over 3 million views within 24 hours. Then I got an email. Not from a lawyer, not from a journalist, from Karen herself. I know you're the man from Seat 3A. I know what I did was wrong, but things got out of control. I lost my freelance clients after they saw the video. I lost my family. My mother won't speak to me anymore because she's too ashamed. I'm not apologizing to escape consequences. I just hope someone out there can say one thing for me. I'm not the monster they think I am. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I truly believe that sometimes silence is the only response that forces someone to face themselves. I kept reading through hundreds of comments across articles and videos about the incident. One elderly viewer wrote, "Years ago on a flight, I saw a young mother politely ask to swap seats so she could sit beside her child. No one refused, because she asked with respect. But Karen, she demanded it with arrogance, and even at the very end, she never realized she was wrong." Another commenter offered a different view. "We live in such a harsh era. One mistake gets dissected by millions. I'm not defending Karen, but I fear the kind of world where society piles on and forgets what forgiveness means." And me? What do I think? Karen wasn't punished just because she was wrong. She was punished because she refused to be less wrong. She doubled down. She magnified the damage until everyone around her had to carry the burden too. What about you? Do you think Karen deserved to be banned from flying? To lose her career? To be cast aside by the internet? If you agree with how the airline handled it and believe this was a necessary lesson, type 6 in the comments. If you think Karen was treated too harshly and deserves another chance, type 8. Share your thoughts below. Because this story isn't just about one woman. It's a mirror, reflecting a world where any of us could be a bystander, a victim, or even unintentionally, a Karen, if we don't know when to stop ourselves. Karen's story spun far beyond what a single Facebook post could control, far beyond the first-class seat she tried to claim. So far, in fact, that even I found myself asking, how could someone lose themselves over just a seat? But then I realized it was never just a seat. Karen had become a living meme across countless platforms, screenshots of her screaming, captions slapped over photos "I have rights," images of her being zip-tied, dragged away, edited like a scene from a 90s sitcom. And every time I scrolled past those images, I no longer found it funny. I saw someone who had completely lost control of herself. And on the other side, not social media, but real life, Karen disappeared. No more posts, no more live streams, no more rallying cries for justice. Just one email, short, no more requests for help. "I understand now, I went too far, thank you for staying silent. That taught me more than any lecture ever could." I thought a lot about that, about what she had done, about how everyone responded, and about how I did. Was it right that she got banned from flying? Was it fair that the entire internet turned on her in a single moment? Is forgiveness even possible if someone only changes after every door has closed? I don't have a clear answer, but I remember her eyes as she was escorted out, empty, exhausted, and maybe, just maybe, holding a flicker of real regret. Was Karen ever a good person? Someone who once knew how to wait her turn to sit where she was assigned? Someone who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard? Did life wear her down? Too many dismissals, too many times feeling unseen. Did she start believing that only the loudest demands would make the world listen? Someone left a comment once that still echoes in my mind. "I feel sorry for Karen. She wasn't wrong for wanting more. She was wrong for forgetting that other people have rights too." A month after the incident, I received a message from an anonymous account. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, I just want a chance to start over." Attached was a link to a new blog. No profile picture, no name, just a few quiet words on a blank page. I used to think I could manipulate an entire flight with a few words and a phone. I thought influence was power. But I was wrong. Real influence is knowing who you're affecting, and how. The post wasn't viral, it didn't trend, but I read it, and I felt something genuine inside it. I saw someone trying to hear their own voice again after the whole world had shouted over them. The young man who filmed the video later wrote, "I was furious at her, but when I saw her accounts wiped, her family exposed, her career gone, it started to feel like too much. Who among us hasn't done something stupid while panicking?" An older viewer left a comment on a video recap. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means seeing someone fully, both their mistakes and their capacity to change." As for me, I'm still not sure I can fully forgive. But I do know one thing for certain. I don't want to carry bitterness. Because if there's one thing worth holding on to from this story, it's not the image of a woman screaming. It's the image of a person finally standing back up, late, yes, but still in time, to begin again, right where she lost her footing. Between anger and compassion, Between being right and giving a second chance, where do you choose to stand? If you believe Karen deserves a chance to start over, type 6 in the comments. If you believe her actions crossed a line that can't be undone, type 8. This story isn't about picking sides. It's about asking yourself, if one day you sit in the wrong seat on a plane or in life, would you want someone to look at you with fairness? That flight ended long ago, but its echoes remain, not just in my memory, but in the minds of millions who watched it unfold online, through comments, debates, shares, and judgment. I don't remember if the meal was any good that day. I can't recall the in-flight movie. But I remember the sounds. The click of the zip tie. Karen's shout, "I have rights." The quiet relief when the cabin door finally closed. It's strange how a complete stranger can be etched into your memory after only a few hours. But then I realized, it's not because they're unforgettable. It's because they reflect something back at us. I've asked myself many times since, if I were in Karen's place, what would I have done? Would I have stayed calm if I felt mistreated? Have I ever used my little bit of power to silence someone without meaning to? Would I have had the courage to admit I was wrong when all eyes were on me? No one is born a Karen. But anyone can become a version of her if we don't pause to examine our own limits. And like Karen, any of us could end up in the wrong seat, in life, in relationships, in what we think we're owed, if we don't know when to stop. A month after the incident, I found myself on another flight. Same airline, same route, same first-class cabin. When the head flight attendant recognized me, she smiled gently. "This one will be a lot quieter," she said with a gentle smile. I smiled back, saying nothing. The seat was the same, the service was the same, but I was different. This time, I didn't sit with the feeling of being entitled. I sat with gratitude, grateful for a seat that matched the value I paid, the attitude I carried, and the kindness I wanted to hold on to throughout the journey. I don't know where she is now. Maybe she stepped away from the online world. Maybe she's quietly writing a book no one knows about. Maybe she's starting over at a small coffee shop, in a job that doesn't require followers. I'm not sure if she's fully changed, but I believe she's trying, because no one walks through a storm that fierce and comes out wanting to cause another. And if one day I cross paths with her again, not on a plane, but anywhere at all, I won't turn away. I'll nod, gently, as if to say, "Welcome back to the sky." Life is a series of flights. Some people board, some leave, some sit in the wrong seat, some give theirs up, some stay quiet, and some demand to be heard. But one thing never changes. Every flight needs kindness in order to take off safely. So if you ever feel like you're losing control, ask yourself, am I sitting in the right seat? Am I overshadowing others with the weight of my own hurt? Do I have the courage to take a step back and admit I was wrong, instead of doubling down to prove I was right? Have you ever been the Karen in someone else's story? And if you've stumbled, have you been forgiven? Or are you still waiting for someone to nod at you and give you a way back? If you believe everyone deserves a second chance, type 6 in the comments. If you believe some mistakes can't be undone, type 8. Whatever you choose, remember this: your next flight, your next beginning, might start the moment this video ends. Thank you for flying with us through this story. If this touched something in you, please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you stories that reach the heart. And don't forget to leave a comment, because your perspective just might be the starting point someone else is searching for. If you've ever been in a similar situation or witnessed a real-life Karen moment, feel free to share your story in the comments below. We truly want to hear your experience, because sometimes the smallest stories carry the biggest lessons. Thank you for watching until the very end. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story that speaks to the heart. Let's keep our skies and our communities respectful, thoughtful, and kind. Bookmark, go back.